and welcome to Cooking in the Kitchen with Growing Home and LaQuandra, and I am LaQuandra. So today we have a recipe that includes potatoes and greens. And when I ran across this recipe, I was like, it really looks tasty. And since we have all of these things in season right now on the farm, I figured I'll just incorporate them as well. So today we'll be using the leaves of the bok choy, some lacinato kale, nice red potatoes, zucchini or summer squash, and a sweet pepper. The other ingredients that we're going to add, which is our seasonings, is just some black pepper, crushed red pepper, sea salt, olive oil, and of course minced ginger. And if you have actual peppers at home and cloves of garlic, you can definitely use those if you don't want to use already jarred or minced garlic. So with this recipe, we're actually going to chop and prep our potatoes and get them boiling. They'll boil for about maybe 10 minutes until they're tender in salted water. Once we chop up all of our leaves, we're going to add those into our pot as well and let those cook for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll drain off all the excess water. We'll put some olive oil and seasonings into our skillet, and we'll get a nice little brown coating on our tomatoes, kind of crunchy a little bit, and then we'll add in our greens and our zucchini and our pepper. Give it a quick toss and we'll be done. So let's get started. So of course everything is already pre-washed. We wash it ahead of time. So I'm going to begin to prep. So we're going to start off with our lacinato kale, and you can actually use the whole entire thing. So we're just going to chop this right on up and put it aside in a bowl. I tend to kind of roll mine together. It just makes it easier for me to keep it intact. And then I just gently slice all the way down the stem. So next we're actually going to chop our bok choy, and because it actually takes a little bit longer to cook the bottom portion, the white part, but it's also, all of this plant is edible. You just cut off the stalk and you can actually saute the whole thing, which we've done in previous recipes, but for this one, we're really just going to concentrate on the leaves. So I'm just going to chop that part off, and then I'll also give the leaves a rough chop the same way that I did. I'm going to roll them up and use that same method as before. Try and keep them all together. So now that we have our potatoes already sliced, look at that color. We're going to go ahead and add these to our skillet so that they can start cooking. And this is lightly salted water already. And we're going to let these potatoes boil for about 10 minutes. So myself, sometimes I actually like to add a little bit of seasoning to my potatoes or whatever I'm boiling first, just out of habit. But to me, cooking is all about whatever the flavor is that you want. So I really like a lot of pepper, so I like to add it ahead of time. But you can also wait and kind of do it in the end when you get ready to saute it. So for the zucchini, I'm just going to slice it as thinly as possible. I'm not using any machines or anything today. So of course we're gonna cut off the stem portion and just try to slice them as thinly as possible, or whatever shape you want. You can cut them the long way or the short way. I just like to just slice along the cut and just leave them in circles for this recipe. And because it doesn't take your zucchini very long to cook, we're gonna add those in at the end when we do the sauteing process, along with our sweet peppers, because I kind of like a little bit of crunch to my vegetables, so I'm definitely gonna add this toward the end because I still want it to be intact and I want that little snap of crunch when I start to eat my dish. So we're just gonna slice this really thin into long strips, and you can add more or less, solely up to your preference. Be careful of the seeds. So I'm gonna cut around the core. So we'll try to cut these into strips as much as possible. But again, it's really not necessary unless you're just in love with strips. You could dice them up as well, or if you even just have frozen, you could use the frozen version as well. So you can pretty much set a timer, or depending on the width and the length of your potatoes, which is I kind of just cut them into little cubes or as cubes as possible. Check them periodically to just make sure they're not too soft, because even though the recipe says 10 minutes, it could be done pretty faster depending on how your heat goes through your saucepan. So I would just check it maybe 5 to 6 minutes in to check the consistency and to make sure that they won't be too soft, because you still have to get that sear and get a little crisp on them for the recipe. So now that our potatoes are already tender, way under the 10-minute mark, we're going to add our greens inside of our potatoes right now for about another minute or so. And this is the lacinato kale and the bok choy mixed together. So just going to add that right on in. So the recipe actually calls for 1 pound or 1.5 pounds of potato. But if you're like me, you can actually incorporate more veggies to substitute the weight for the potatoes themselves. I'm just gonna move my potatoes and kind of put them on top of our leaves, just so we can get the leaves submerged in water to speed up the process. I'm gonna cover with the top, and like I said, just let this get a quick boil for about a minute or two, because we're gonna finish this off sauteing. So our 2-minute mark is up, and our greens are pretty tender, so we're gonna drain all of the water out of this. So I'm just gonna pour it in a colander in the sink and drain it all out. So now that we drained everything, I'm gonna heat our olive oil. Same saucepan. I'm gonna add a little bit of seasoning. This is already hot. So it calls for a teaspoon of garlic, but everyone knows I love garlic, so I'm pretty much gonna use this whole spoonful. Gonna drain off the excess liquid. Move the greens to the side. I'll try to add as many potatoes as possible without the green first. We're gonna let this cook for about maybe 5 minutes just to get a quick sear, and then we're gonna throw in, actually we can add our zucchini now. So I actually sliced them pretty large. So I think I'm gonna cut them in half just for the recipe, because my saucepan isn't as large as I would like. So we're just gonna add those in and just around. Our garlic is already browning, and it's okay to add more olive oil as you're cooking, because of course, like things like potatoes, they will soak the olive oil right in. We're just gonna add a little bit more, and then we're gonna put our top on and let it simmer for a while. So once the zucchini cooks, or at least gets a little bit tender, I'm gonna go ahead, and it's starting to stick. I'm gonna go ahead and add our other greens inside. And then lightly sauce with the peppers. I'm gonna go ahead and add our peppers as well. And then you can go ahead and add additional seasonings if you like, which I'm going to add our black pepper, of course. Just a little bit of the crushed red pepper. And that's only because typically when I cook with black pepper, sometimes it actually gets hotter the longer that I cook with it. And sometimes it's like really, really too overbearing with the crushed red pepper. So I'm just going to only add a little bit. And of course you can salt and season to taste. And me, I'm always a big garlic fan. We're just going to use maybe just a pinch of salt, because I feel like the garlic already has a nice little texture of seasoning by itself. Don't want to do too much. And I always just like to have my veggies as close to the natural taste as possible. I'm just going to give this a quick toss. All of the veggies are cooking right on down just the way we want them to be. Like I said, for the 2 minutes, or to your desired tenderness, you're ready to plate and serve. And this can be a full dish on its own, or it also can be used as a side. So because it's so hearty and we have the potatoes and the squash, I think this will just be like my little simple lunch / dinner all by itself. So thank you all for tuning in. And if you have any questions, reach out to Growing Home, or you can email me, lfair@growinghomeinc.org, for any other questions. So I hope you enjoyed, and all of these ingredients came straight from the farm. So thank you all. Have a good day. Bye.